Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to continue our journey watching Rebecca and Zied on 90 Day Fiancé. Before the 90 days, let's get to the show. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor, and I'm going to react to the show as I watch it. Let's get to the show.
I arrived in Tunisia 2 days ago to meet Zied in person for the first time. I came hoping to get engaged, but I'm seeing a side of Zied that I did not know was there, and it's definitely a red flag.
Right. So in the last reaction video I made for the last episode that this was on, there was a ramp up to what we're seeing right now. Go back and watch that last reaction video if you haven't already. To summarize, what happened was for Rebecca, she was trying to dress in how she wants to dress when she goes out there in Tunisia. And he was saying, Zied was saying, you can't dress like that because that's going to draw too much attention to you, and it's not the way we do things here. And I'm very jealous as a man, and I don't want to have that happen. And Rebecca said, I've been there, done that before in relationships. In fact, I dated a guy from Morocco. I married a guy from Morocco, and he had the same attitude. And I gave in to him. I did everything he said. I didn't wear makeup. I changed everything about me. And he just got worse and worse and worse in terms of his controlling. And eventually we had to divorce. So I'm not going to do that again. And I'm going to dress the way I want to dress. And if anything bad happens, then so be it. And I'm going to put you to the test here and see if you can handle that. If you can handle the fact that I am a human being worthy of respect, worthy of someone who doesn't have to do what you say just because you don't like it. And, let's work together here. And that makes total sense to me. From Zied's perspective, it's harder for me to know what's going on for him because I am not from Tunisia and don't have a lot of experience with Tunisian culture. So I don't know. I don't know if his attitude is right down the middle. I don't know if his attitude, even for Tunisian people, would be a little bit too controlling and jealous. I don't know the landscape. If I did, I would be able to situate his reactivity better. Like, for example, if someone in Seattle were to do this behavior, someone that was born and raised in Seattle, a man, and he was acting like this, what happened was they're at this public place and this other guy that they don't know was looking at her arms, looking at her tattoos, and Zied got angry and said, "What are you looking at? Stop looking at my woman," essentially. And we're going to have to fight now. If I saw a guy in Seattle do that, I'd be like, whoa. If he was born and raised in my area of the world, I would know that that was very far away from the mean in terms of the average reaction to that situation, and I would probably label it as pathological. But in other cultures, they have different ideas. They have different ideas of masculinity and femininity and duty, meaning your duty to honor and your need to uphold the honor of your partners, pumped into their head, all these different ideas. In Seattle, we have a lot of ideas pumped into our head. In other parts of the world, you have other ideas. And so I have a hard time evaluating Zied's behavior. Now, I want to be clear, that doesn't mean it's right. There are certain cultural norms that we can all agree are just not okay. They are sexist, or they are harmful to children or harmful to people in general. So just because something is normal or normalized or average in a society does not mean that it is not criticizable. But it does provide context, right? What's going on for him? I would want to know, if I were their couples therapist and they came into a session after this happened, I would spend a lot of time, and this is what I do, asking Zied, well, so tell me about your culture. Tell me about what's normal. Tell me about what ideas you have about men and women, what ideas you have about when other strangers look at your spouse. What does that mean? And how are the two of you going to work together, given that you come from different cultures around that? The hope that I would have had prior to this moment because now it looks like there's going to be an altercation. I would have wished that they would have spent more time, perhaps even before she came over to Tunisia, talking about this very thing. Here's what I think about it. Here's what I think about it. Here's what I want. Here's what I want. What are we going to do about that? How are we going to navigate that? They rarely do that on this show. There's just a lot of lovey-dovey talk over FaceTime. From what they show us, almost no talk about the practical reality of a relationship. And then they meet in person, and almost immediately with these couples, there's just like all these really horrible things that happen. So let's see what they do with this here.
هنا بلاد عربية الرجال اللي هنا تركز كيفاش المرأة لابسة ديجا التاتو متاعها يجذب النظر. يا دي قاعدة وحدين المرأة بغزولة.
Now, another thing that could be happening, and this is a lot of speculation, is that because Zied is very jealous, as he has stated, that he's creating a scene to make Rebecca feel very uncomfortable so that she will step into line. I don't know. Or another factor that could be in addition to that, or just separate to that, that I said before in the previous reaction video, is Zied actually feels like in order to uphold her honor, he must stand up to the other women who are doing things to her. I gave the analogy last time that if I were with my wife and we were walking down the road together and someone just out of the blue just grabbed her, I would have an impulse, given my cultural understandings and what's been pumped into my head, that I had a duty to protect my wife from that man. I might even have to punch him in the face or something, you know. Now, I don't know what I do. I'm generally a nonviolent person, but, you know, when I get in the moment, you just get triggered and you just want to attack, fight or flight kind of stuff. So I don't know if that's what he's feeling right now, where he feels like, well, I'm kind of forced into a situation, given my cultural understandings, that I must fight back on these guys. I must push back on them because I must protect her. Now, even in my culture in Seattle, there's a lot of problematic notions there that we could go into around like men possessing women, that my wife is a possession of mine and that you can't touch my possession. That's infused in that masculine idea. And there's a lot we could talk about regarding that. Of course, couples should talk about this regardless of what gender configuration the two of them have or the five of them have if they're a polyamorous relationship, and talk about what they want to do around that. I have talked with my wife about stuff like that, and I can't remember exactly what we came up with, but from my memory, she doesn't want me to punch people in the face. It's like, no, let's just ignore it. Let's not create a scene. Let's not make more problems for ourselves. And I usually agree with that, and if I could help it, I would absolutely do that in the moment. It's just like, okay, something bad happened. Now I'm going to get in a fight. Something bad could happen there. Someone could lose an eye or, have a permanent back injury. I mean, you get older and you start worrying about these things, So, those are just conversations to have. They're very nuanced. There's a lot of gender ideas that we have to break down and be critical of. We have to think about what's going on there. The main principle that I find that a lot of people don't identify is how can both people have what they want and get their needs met and feel like they have power equally. So for Rebecca, she clearly wants, and has stated, she wants to have the power to dress the way she wants to dress within reason. She's not wearing a bathing suit in a restaurant. She just has a shirt on that shows her shoulders. And that's what she wants to do. She wants that power. And she wants to feel like she can incur the consequences of whatever happens around that. And she wants Zied to respect her in that way. And she wants to feel like she can do that. Zied, I don't know what his needs are because we haven't heard him talk about it. We've only heard him say that he's jealous, that's not the way they do it here, which I understand totally. And if I were raised in Tunisia, maybe I would be on board with what he's saying of just like, look, you don't understand. Other men, they might actually attack you based on the way you're dressing. Or they're really going to judge me and think that I'm a terrible human being. I don't want to deal with that. I just want to go out. Maybe we would hear something from him that would make it more understandable, but they just haven't had that conversation. And so there's a huge misunderstanding happening right now, I think. Or this is the first sign of Zied revealing himself to be a highly jealous, very problematic human being. I don't know. Well, maybe you know because you've seen ahead, but I don't know. Let's continue watching.
This was the first time that I saw a similarity between Zied and my ex. It really bothered me. My ex was Moroccan, and we ended up getting married. But when I brought him to America, he was very jealous and very controlling over what I wore. So I'm definitely worried. All I did was take my jacket off, and then all of a sudden, his first reaction was to fight with this guy.
Right, so there's that context there, which makes total sense to me.
عايز تحكي علي انت وين؟ وين منك؟ ها؟ تغسل المرتبة تبعي مش نحكي معك يا شبك.
The stranger is talking with his friends, and he's just like, I don't know what's wrong with this guy. Like, I don't know what happened here. I don't know what, because I think his friends were like, what's going on with the guy? He's like, I don't know. And then Zied lays into him again about, you're talking about me? I mean, now you're just trying to fight. That's what you're trying to do. Like, you're determined to get into a fight with this guy. So that is a yikes from me.
انا تو متغشش على خاطر قريبك قال هي ما حبش تفهم اللي مش كما في امريكا كما في تونس شكيت لي ما تسمعش كلام.
Right, that's what he keeps saying is things are different in Tunisia, which I get 100%. And Rebecca could do a little bit better empathizing with that and saying to Zied, I get where you're coming from. I know Tunisia is different than America. I know this is challenging for you. I know that I stick out, not only because I look American and also because I dress more provocatively given this society. I get that and I hear you, but I still want to do this because it's very important to me. She didn't have that kind of vibe. She's just like, this is what I'm doing, I'm moving on, which I respect, but I think maybe what could have helped was a little bit more understanding each other. And that's a key thing in conflict that I deal with all the time with couples is there's this assumption that if I validate the other person, they win. So they're in a conflict. He is saying, I need you to keep that jacket on because I can't have you showing your shoulders in public because I'm jealous and that's not how we do things here. Her standpoint is, I need this because I've been controlled before and I'm not going to do it again. And I think this is reasonable. And if someone looks at me, so be it. You're going to have to deal with that. This is kind of a test for you to see if you can handle how to be flexible here or if you're really rigid. So for the two of them, they are not understanding each other, right? And that's very common. They have never to this point said, I get you, but I'm still going to do it this way. I understand what you're saying and I understand where you're coming from, but I still have this stance. There's this resistance to empathize or to validate the other person. But when you do that, you bring the person down in intensity quite a bit. At the very least, you preserve the relationship and the goodness between the two of you, right? But you can really get a long way in relationships in this way, even at work, or you just meet someone on the street. You just say, hey, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. You're saying this and this and this. I get it, right? Is that what you're telling me? Okay. And I'm still going to do this right now. But there's this notion, there's this cognitive bias that, well, if I do that, if I understand where they're coming from and validate them or something, well, then they win. And that's actually not true. What happens when you, not all the time, but usually, when you feel understood, when you know, you're arguing with someone and you validate the other person, the validated person, often that's all they want is for you to hear them and validate them. And then they're like, oh, okay. So maybe if she had done that to Zied and said, I get where you're coming from. I understand. Tell me more. Okay. I hear you, makes total sense. I'm really sorry that I'm going to do this, but I'm still going to do it. Maybe Zied would have been like, oh, well, she hears me. Because you hear him right now, he's saying, I'm worried that she won't listen to me. That's the narrative that people start to have is she ever going to listen to me? Is she ever going to validate me? Then we get into some trouble, because then you get real hurt, you get real worried, and you get real panicky, and you get real desperate to like, I must change the other person's mind, and then you're off to the races in terms of the vicious cycle of conflict. So let's see how they manage it here.
نقعد نحكي معها ديما وما تسمعش كلامي، ممكن نبعد عليها.
Look at me. Look at me.
It's okay.
Look at me.
So this isn't a great sign, I have to say. She put her jacket back on, and she's asking for him to just look at her, and he can't do it. Now, there are two factors possibly for him. One is he is in such distress, fight or flight. He looks like he's not, or he looks like he's not completely blowing a gasket, but he could be in this moment, and this could be his way of coping with it, is to smoke and to look away and to give the silent treatment and to shut down. But he could be very, very upset in this moment. So that's one reason. The other reason is this might be what the tip of the iceberg regarding how he deals with conflict through his aggression and his withdrawal. Maybe this is his pattern of communicating his displeasure about anything. And so we might be seeing, and we probably will, because this show usually ends up being that way, and humans end up being that way, that this might be a very common dynamic where they're in the midst of a fight. She's trying to connect with him in probably a healthy way, and he's just completely stonewalling her. This is, one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse that John Gottman identified, if you know of his research. Very extensive research here in Seattle, if in fact the most research on couples regarding exactly what they do and what leads to success and what leads not to and what leads to divorce and dissolving of the relationship, is stonewalling. That's one of them. Is to, when you turn away and you just refuse to. Now, in the middle of a fight, maybe that's the best thing to do, because you're so activated, you're just going to say a bunch of terrible things. But eventually you got to turn around and not stonewall, right? So let's see how they manage this. This isn't encouraging.
Tonight could totally change my relationship with Zied. And I worry that the secrets that I've been keeping about my past might be enough to push him over the edge.
All right, if you haven't already subscribed below, that'd be cool. If you want to hit the bell, that you get notifications when we post new episodes. If you want, totally optional, of course. And everyone out there, this is not optional. Please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.